Hello and welcome to PhDtalk. My name is Miriam and I'm the host on this podcast where I interview PhD students to let them talk about their topics and struggles and joys, and where me and others share tips with you to make your life as a PhD student more effective, less stressful, and most importantly, more fun. For today's episode, I met up with Ching. Ching and I met first, or we got to know each other doing a writer's development course. And ever since, we have actually been meeting regularly to write together. And Ching, like me, does her PhD studies at the University of Copenhagen, and in her case, in collaboration with Arla Foods. And together with them, she researches sensory sciences in children. More specifically, how kids perceive food, and not just in terms of flavor or taste, but more in terms of the texture and other characteristics. What is it that kids like, and what is it that kids maybe don't like so much? Then I wish you a lot of fun with today's episode, and let's talk science. Today's introduction is in Cantonese.
Hello， 大家好，我係周清瑜。咁今年咧就喺哥本哈根大學讀緊第二年嘅博士生啦。咁我嘅研究領域咧就係食品科學之中嘅一個分支，叫做感官科學。而我哋喺呢個感官科學嘅領域入邊咧，就會去問一啲問題啦，就係針對點解人我哋會中意食我哋中意食嘅嘢咧，譬如有甜酸苦辣啦，有好多唔同嘅氣味啊，食物嘅質感啊、口感，點解有啲特別嘅食品嘅特徵我哋會中意，有啲我哋會好討厭、好唔中意，而每個國家文化又點解會有咁大嘅差異？咁感官科學就係去嘗試為呢啲問題提出解答啦，而我嘅 PhD 即係我嘅博士研究題目咧，就係針對細路仔3至6歲嘅小朋友，咁佢喺佢哋嘅成長過程中，呢3年針對喺佢哋對食物嘅質感有啲咩個人喜好嘅變化，因為呢3年其實佢哋嗰個成長係變化都好大嘅，譬如佢哋嗰個口腔嘅變化啦、換牙或者係個性上嘅發展啊，點樣去影響到佢哋對食物嘅口感嗰個偏好，而亦都係因為3至6歲嘅小朋友咧，我哋唔可以直接用一個好大人嘅方法問點解你中意食呢樣嘢或者唔中意，咁我哋就要專門去做一啲我哋話係工具啦，就係適合佢哋嗰個3至6歲小朋友嘅智力啊，或者係佢哋嘅嗰個耐性去設計一啲問卷啊，或者係一啲實驗咧，去收集資料同埋數據嘅。
Hello, today I'm talking to Ching. Welcome to my little office. Ching, would you like to, well, let's start at the beginning. What did you do before you became a PhD student?
You mean right before, or?
What did you study, like your academic background?
So I arrived in Denmark almost 5 years ago to study a master program here called Food Innovation and Health. And before that, I was in Hong Kong working as a medical sales. So it's a relatively big change because I wasn't working with any research-related activities before arriving in Denmark. Yeah.
Okay. And then how did it come that you did a PhD, and why?
That was quite an interesting story because at first when I arrived in Denmark to do my master, I never thought of doing a PhD at all, and I don't even know what exactly is my field now. Like now I'm working in sensory science, which is a branch of food science, you can say. But when I first arrived Denmark, I have no idea about sensory science at all. It's just a coincidence that I have started joining some or participating some research project quite early stage during my master during my master. So in the first half year I already joined the first research project.
As a working student?
Yes.
Okay.
As a working student, also as a, you can say, some project outside of course scope.
Okay.
That's why then I have, for the 2 years of master, I've been 1.5 years doing research, including my thesis.
Okay.
That's why when I graduate, I got a position as research assistant for a year. Then I got this opportunity to work as a PhD student afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, nice. And what is your PhD about? You said you're studying sensory science. What is that?
Yes, so sensory science is a field that to try to answer the questions of why humans eat what they eat, why humans like to eat what we are eating. So we try to use human as an instrument to measure different sensory properties in food. This is the more descriptive side or quantitative side of sensory science, but there is also a more hedonic or affective side of try to understand what type of products or foods will be liked by different age group, different culture, or to study certain kind of individual difference among all of us. And for my specific PhD project, I'm working with some very young children from 3 to 6 years old, and to understand how their texture preference and perceptions develop within this age range. It is relatively challenging because for this age range, they have limited cognitive abilities and attentional span, so you cannot use the more sophisticated method to try to ask them, but you have to suit their ability and to develop tools or method according to their criteria. Yeah.
Okay. And what would an experiment like that look like, if I can even call it an experiment?
Yeah, that is yeah, sometimes people will, I don't know, this is more old school saying that there's some hard science and there's some soft science. Like hard science will be referred to those mathematics, physics, and so on, and soft science is the psychology or those studying human behavior that is relatively more difficult to replicate in an experimental setting. So we work in the soft science field, and for children, there's I would still call it an experiment because we still follow the procedures of generating hypothesis, making a protocol, and testing out if your hypothesis is correct or not. And it's more on the how you adjust the experiment to meet the need of your users. Let's say it's children, then you have to make the questions or the answer options are simple enough for them to understand the test or the task to give you some reliable result for interpretations. Yeah.
And what did you test, for example? What did you give them, and what were they supposed to answer?
So for my first experiment that I have been working with, we are trying to develop a questionnaire or a tool, you can say, to measure their texture preference, in the sense like whether they would prefer a harder food or soft food, or they would prefer food with a smooth texture or food with a lumpy texture or a lot of particles in the food, something like that. And because if we are only collecting their answers, we will not we cannot tell how reliable the answer it is, because children's behavior is rather unpredictable. So we need to know if they can give reliable answers, so that this tool or this questionnaire is validated, and we can use it into another setting, different culture or different age group. So what we have been doing is to first develop a questionnaire that children in a forced choice setting, they have to choose. Let's say I present a pair of food that is different in texture. For example, it could be a yogurt with pieces versus yogurt without any pieces. So they have to choose which one they prefer more. And this repeat by showing them different kind of forced choice options. And this is the first phase of completing the questionnaire. And then in the second phase, we bring back some of the food from the questionnaire into a reality setting. So we present that real food in front of them, ask them to taste it and to make their choice again. So we can, by that sense, to see how repeatable they are. If let's say in the yogurt setting, they choose a smooth yogurt. So when we bring the real food in front of them, is the child still choosing a smooth yogurt or not? Because if they are not choosing the same answer, which means they are not too reliable when using the questionnaire. And if they are consistent themselves that in the first questionnaire I choose smooth yogurt, and in the real tasting I also choose smooth yogurt, which means the questionnaire is a good measurement of their actual texture preference. Yeah.
And what is the difference between what you said, this forced setting and then the real experiment?
It's also a forced choice. It's also a forced settings is by the means that I only provide two options, A or B, that you have to choose. And in the real settings, I actually bring some of these A-B choice in real life, because in the questionnaire they just answer on the screen and they don't have any tasting.
They just think about what they would choose. They don't actually.
It's a questionnaire. Yes, they don't actually taste it.
Okay.
So that is a questionnaire on the screen. Then we bring it into real life.
I see.
The way we do it so that once we develop the questionnaire, this is a reliable thing, and the next time we don't need to bring the real food, because we already know that the questionnaire is good enough to capture certain amount of information about their preference.
Okay, so the question is whether the child actually understands if you tell them, okay, you have to choose between a strawberry yogurt that has pieces and a strawberry yogurt that doesn't have pieces. Like, does the child actually get an image in its head?
Exactly, And is this image correspond to reality? Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I see. And what have you found out so far?
So far, because I have been working with 3 to 6 years old children, one of the quite expected result that I have found is that this kind of reliability or the repeatability of their answer increase with their age, because it is we are actually testing certain cognitive abilities on the children, on whether they can understand the questionnaire enough or being stable enough across these two settings. One is on the screen and one is in a real eating scenario. And then, but in overall, it is a quite reliable result that even children as young as 3 years old, they can give repeatable result.
Okay.
Not like 100% repeatable. That we will not expect even in an adult. Yes. Okay. But children can do it as well, like 3 years old children. And then the second interesting result is that in human we have a term called food neophobia, which means a reluctance or fear to try novel food or food you have never tried before, whether you have a very open mind attitude to say, I would like to try it, or you just say, no, I would never try because I don't like it because I never taste it. Yeah. So it's certain neophobia dimensions happens in all human beings, and this is quite. Children between 3 to 6 years old is quite high in food neophobia.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they would try to reject every food, every new food that is offered to them. This is a certain developmental progressions that they would come through because they are going through a weaning process from being parent fit to being independent. Yeah. So it is a more innate defensive mechanism within them. Yeah. And we, of course, 3 to 6 years old is a period of high in food neophobia, but there's also some individual difference across this age group, and we found that those children who are particularly high in food neophobia, or you can say picky, they are those who reject pieces like yogurt lumps, fruit pieces in yogurt, or some pulps in orange juice, or peanut butter with peanut chunks inside. All the particles or all the food that has things in it, they will dislike it and reject it. And it has something to do with the fear of no-fo food, or a neophobic response, we would say. Yeah.
And that is also because it doesn't have the same texture as the milk that they got from their mother, or
not necessarily, because by the time of 3, from 3 to 6 they actually develop all their primary teeth. They can chew on food quite well. Of course, not as good as we adults have the skills, but it shouldn't be a problem for them to chew, but it's more like a psychological barrier for them to accept foods with things in it. Yeah. So it is more a personality difference, I would say, and in fact those who are high in food neophobia or picky eating are also those with a personality that is being more anxious, or temperament. In terms of temperament, they are more emotional when it comes to eating, or as in a general. But this is most of the studies is from adults instead of children.
Okay. So parents can be a bit more patient with their kids. It's not just their kids. It's
and every kids will have this period of time, and the magnitude difference according to the child itself, or maybe because of the parents. Like if your parents are picky, then it's higher tendency that the children are also picky.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. And then you also told me that you are doing an industrial PhD. Would you like to say a bit about how that is different from a normal PhD?
Yes, so I'm doing an industrial PhD in Denmark, and I think industrial PhD is something relatively specific. I don't know, but it's which means I'm actually employed by a company, and my PhD project is also funded by a company. And in my case, for my PhD, I work with Arla Foods. So, and the project is funded halfly by Arla Foods and halfly by Inno Foundation Denmark. So I think the main difference is I have both the university supervisor and a company supervisor. So my project, or in general an industrial PhD project, is always trying to meet the goal or the demands from both the academia side and the business side. But as a PhD student, I still follow the graduation requirement in Denmark, like to have 30 ECTS and publish certain amount of paper within 3 years and so on. So in the academic terms, I don't see any huge difference between a normal academic PhD or an industrial PhD, but more that you have more supervisors, and when you make decisions, you need to consider more perspective than just purely an academic pursuit. Yes.
Okay. And then what are you doing apart from the direct, what do you do apart from just your PhD work, your research? Is there anything you do apart from that? Do you teach, or do you supervise students, or do you also work in the company, or how does that work?
So normally for an industrial PhD student, most of the case actually the candidate will work in the company.
Yeah.
And so since they have spent most of the time working in the company as a knowledge disseminations, so they don't have to teach. And so they spend the time of teaching to be knowledge dissemination in the company.
That means?
That means I think an academic PhD, you need to allocate certain time to teach and to engage in certain knowledge dissemination activities. And that will be directly translated to a company that you give presentation in the company, or you spread the knowledge of what you have gained through the PhD studies. And that's the typical case of industrial PhD. But I have been kind of a little bit special for my PhD project that based on an agreement, the company decided to place me in a university so that I'm an industrial PhD student working in a university.
Okay.
But title-wise, I don't have to teach. So it is more voluntary or optional to choose to teach and or to supervise students or not. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you supervise any students?
Yes, I do, and I also teach a little bit. So, yeah, I have given a lecture, some lectures before, and currently I'm also supervising a master students on working with related projects, also on food texture and sensory science. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you can also use their work in what you do, or is their work completely independent from yours?
Yeah, I think her work is completely independent from my project. But it is always interesting to supervise or just to get into other people's research to know what they are doing and what is the result. Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I'm in the supervision team. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Nice. Do you have anything that you say, okay, this I like particularly well about my PhD, and is there something that you struggle with in particular that you'd like to share? Any goods and the bads?
The goods and the bads, I think let's start with the good. I actually enjoy a lot to work in a university environment, even though I'm an industrial PhD. So I share a big office with 5 other PhD students in my room, and we are all starting at different time and having different pace. So it's always nice to share with each other how far you are in, and of course sometimes I'm in my 1.5 year, a little bit more of my PhD. Okay. So right now I'm the most senior PhD student in the room. Yeah. So when I try to share my problems, maybe there is not much like good feedback or that I can receive, but it's always a comfort because there's people are always listening, and they will at some point go through the situations. Yeah. as well, and that's a really a great part of placing me in the university.
Yeah.
And I also like my PhD projects a lot, in the sense that my company has also have a very high standard of good science work, that not to compromise scientific quality because of like a business goal or something else. Like the expectations between my company supervisors and my university supervisor are quite aligned, and they also value scientific publications as much as my university.
Yeah.
So it is a really lucky or fortunate situations for me as an industrial PhD student, because there's some other case that supervisor may not agree with each other, then it would be more challenging for the PhD students to handle these kind of situations. But it rarely happened on me. So that is also a very good part of my project.
Oh, nice.
And something I find it challenging is also is related to this industrial PhD nature, that because I have supervisors from both sides, so which means I already have more than a double of supervisors than a normal academic PhD would have. Plus, I also am going to do a research visit in Australia, and there also have some supervisors. So I have a huge supervisors team that sometimes I find it challenging for me to align their expectations, even if there is not a huge difference. But because people are different, so the way they think or the suggestions they give can be quite different, and ultimately it's up to me to decide what I want to do with my project. But it's to consolidate every suggestions. Sometimes it's challenging. Yeah.
Many opinions,
Exactly, yes.
Many things that seem like details but turn into big things. Yeah, makes sense. If you could speak to your younger self, like to your pre-PhD self 1.5 years ago, what would you tell yourself? Is there something you could think of? Advice or an encouragement? Or
I think, do you refer to any practical advice or...
Yeah, practical or emotional or anything.
So before PhD, I was working as a research assistant, also in the same department with the same supervisor as my current one. But back then, because it was a lockdown, so we were forced to work at home, and there are a lot of experiments that we cannot execute, and we have to deliver them everything by the end of my contract. So the last couple of months was very intense. So my think back and then to refer back to my PhD now is my advice to my previous self is you don't actually have to be that hardworking in that sense to deliver everything, because if you can't, then it's just good that you acknowledge you have certain limit instead of pushing yourself to the almost the tip of breaking down. And because of course it was fine, because in that context I was a research assistant, and it was 2 months like a spin. It's like 2 months of very intense work, then I'm done with that project. But like a spinning. But PhD project is a 3 years marathon that is not to be work out like this.
Yeah.
And you need to take proper big breaks to recover every week, or recharge, or to just take good care of both the physical and mental health. Doesn't mean that I was having mental issues, but it's just more like reflections. And to enjoy life, there are so many things apart from PhD that should be enjoyed or as important as our PhD studies.
Yeah, true. Knowing our energy balances and how to recharge them.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. You were talking that you would go to Australia. What are your future plans regarding that, or what would happen? What would happen there? Where are you going exactly?
I will be visiting Australia, Melbourne City, and there's a Deakin University, which has been in collaboration with our research team a few years ago, and we have in Deakin there's also a team that is working with a very similar project and topic to understand how texture preference develop in children. And they have every year a very interesting scientific outreach project, which they would run some experiment in Victoria Museum, which like summer or autumn breaks, children will like to visit the museum, and then they can participate a research in the museum. So we will take that opportunity to have some very simple tests, because each children wouldn't spend too long time in a booth to collect for data collections, but we will have maybe 1,000 children visiting the museum within 2 weeks to collect data. Yes, so what I'm going to do is participate in these outreach activities, and I would also have a booth to collect some data on their texture preference, and to have some specific experiment to try to understand why they dislike certain texture, like very hard texture, or foods with things in it. And I'm trying to use this opportunity to collect a lot of data to understand why children dislike this texture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice, sounds like fun.
Yes.
Big kindergarten.
Yes, it's a huge kindergarten. A lot of children visiting you, and intensely. Yes. Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you. Yes.
And patience, maybe.
Yes. It's quite interesting, because when I'm talking every sensory science experiment, it's always the actual data collection is extremely intense. And it's usually 2 weeks to a month that you are in an extremely stressed mode, because the amount of participant can stress you out, but also the preparation work that, let's say in the setting that I offer food samples, if I mix the order of the food samples, then I actually mess up with my data collections. So there are a lot of minor details in the executions that cannot be wrong. And since this is an opportunity that is, let's say, once per year or twice per year, which means you actually will not have a second chance to run the exact experiment again. And even if you run the exact experiment again, people's behavior or people's answer will also change. That's why the nature of the experiment is very different from when you are working in the lab. If today you kind of mess up with the measurement, then you can book the lab tomorrow and do it again. But in this sense, there's not much opportunity or concept of doing it again in sensory science.
True.
But the intense feeling is only that period of time. And before and after is quite relaxing, I would say, and also satisfying. Yes.
Okay. Good. And then the kids will be actually tasting, or will that be the survey, the questionnaire?
It will be both, like doing
both, okay.
questionnaires, but we also try to have different new tasting tasks or activities for them. Yes. Yeah.
Sounds nice. Maybe I would also like to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'm too old. And then going even a bit further into the future, do you know what you would like to do after your PhD, or is that just not within your thinking? Yes.
Well, I actually have some thought of staying in academia.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, I know I still need to focus on my PhD and getting it done.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's my currently, or so far, I have started 1.5 years. It's still quite persistent in my thinking to stay and continue working in research. Yes, and I think maybe next year in my 3rd year, then I would have to consider like talking with my supervisor to see any postdoc opportunities and maybe to write some applications to get funding for my postdoc. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the PhD, the industrial PhD is also 3 years, like for everyone else, or is it longer?
Sorry?
It's 3 years, your PhD in total?
Yes.
Yeah, it's also 3 years.
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Then just maybe you would like to tell us where someone can find you if they would like to know more about your research or get in contact with you. Is there?
Do you mean actual contact or like my physical address or
your LinkedIn or email address?
Yeah,
or
you can
the department. Or...
find me, of course, in LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And my department address is the Department of Food Science in University of Copenhagen.
Yeah.
In Rollingsride 26, 5th floor. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes. And
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks for the interview. It was really nice.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, and maybe in the coming days when you're eating something, maybe today, you might ask yourself, how do I actually like the texture? For some it's more obvious, for some it's less. I guess for crisps or something it's rather obvious, but then just feel into the texture of the food you're eating and ask yourself, why do I like it, or why do I not like it? And if you have kids, ask them too. You might be surprised by their answers. And we often maybe assume that it's all about the taste, but maybe there is a lot more to it. If you found this episode interesting, then please leave us a comment or share it with someone who might enjoy it as well. And then thanks a lot for listening. And I'm looking forward to welcoming you here again next time. All the best, yours, Miriam.